The sound that wakes you is not the wind. It comes through the turf wall beside your sleeping place. One heavy impact, a pause, then the scrape of horn against timber. You lift the stone lamp and push through the narrow opening into the byre. The flame is small. The air is warm with breath and sharp with manure. Cattle stand in the dark behind wooden partitions. Sheep shift together at the far end. One cow has slipped while trying to rise. Her hind leg is trapped beneath her. Your brother braces her shoulder. You pull the leg free. For a moment she lies still, steam lifting from her coat. Then she finds the floor and stands. Nothing has died. That should feel like good news. Instead, your eyes move to the fodder stacked against the wall. In lamplight, the pile looks smaller than it did yesterday. The cow must eat. Every animal in this room must eat. Outside, snow covers the home field where summer grass once reached your ankles. The danger is not a single storm. It is arithmetic. How many animals can the hay keep alive? How many days remain before grazing returns? How many people are left to cut more next summer, repair the roof, launch the boat, and bring the harvest indoors before winter begins again? It is sometime around the middle of the 14th century. You live in the western settlement of Norse Greenland, a chain of farms along the fjords near the place now called Nuuk. Later, people will give this ending many explanations. They will blame cold, hunger, isolation, violence, pride, and a refusal to change. Some will imagine a final night when an entire colony simply vanished. The evidence does not preserve a night like that. It does not preserve your name. It does not preserve your brothers or the name of the child waiting beside the lamp. No record tells us which winter was the last, who left first, or where the final families went. This household is a reconstruction. The farm around you is built from archaeology. The choices are built from the limits that archaeology reveals. And by the time the snow melts, you will understand something more frightening than death in a storm. You can survive a winter and still lose the future. The Norse arrived in Greenland around the year 985. They established two main farming regions. The larger was called the Eastern Settlement. The smaller, farther north, was called the Western Settlement. Both were on Greenland's west coast. Their names described their position relative to each other, not opposite sides of the island. The Western Settlement eventually contained roughly 80 to 100 known farm sites. They were not streets in a single town. They were households spread through fjords and valleys, connected by boats, paths, kinship, exchange, churches, and shared work. No surviving resident wrote the colony's final diary. What remains is different: turf walls, rooms buried by sand and sediment, pieces of wood and iron, woven cloth, animal bones, pollen, insects, managed soils, and the chemical record held in human remains. At a farm now called Gordon under Sandet, the farm beneath the sand, preservation was so unusual that archaeologists could examine changes across centuries of occupation. These traces tell us what people raised, hunted, caught, repaired, stored, and ate. They do not tell us the words spoken in a dark byre, so your household is fictional. The trapped cow, the low hay, and the conversation that follows are dramatized. They stand inside a documented system in which winter fodder, livestock, marine food, imported materials, labor, and uncertain travel all mattered. The date is uncertain too. Archaeology conventionally places the Western settlements ending around the middle of the 14th century, but different farms may have been left at different times. Abandonment was a process, not a synchronized command. This is why the title of this story is both useful and dangerous. There was no proven single winter that destroyed a Viking colony. By this period, the people here were medieval Norse Greenlanders, not raiders sailing out beneath horned helmets. And destruction did not require every resident to die where they stood. A settlement can end when enough people leave that the remaining farms no longer work. This story follows one possible winter when that threshold is crossed. In summer, the name Greenland does not feel like a trick. Grass grows around the heads of sheltered fjords. Willow and scrub hold close to the ground. Water moves through valleys between dark rock and the distant ice. The farms occupy narrow ecological pockets where animals can graze and people can cut hay. The ice sheet is present, but it is not the floor beneath every foot. Norse life clings to the margin between mountain, pasture, and water. Your farm is not a freestanding wooden hall from a legend. Turf and stone make thick walls. Timber is used carefully for roofs, partitions, fittings, vessels, tools, and repairs. The dwelling, byre, barn, and storage spaces form one working organism. In winter, the animals' bodies help warm the rooms. Their manure will help feed the home field. Their milk, wool, meat, hides, and future offspring represent years of survival. Cattle carry status as well as calories. Sheep and goats may be easier to support, but every herd is a calculation between the present and the next generation. The farm is connected to other farms because no household can provide everything alone. A roof repair may need more hands than one family owns. A boat needs a crew. A seal hunt, a journey, a marriage, a burial, or a church gathering pulls people through the landscape. Last summer, your household crossed to a neighboring farm to help lift roof timbers. The summer before that, its people helped bring your hay indoors ahead of rain. This winter, their door is closed. The family did not vanish. Some joined relatives at a larger farm. Others may have traveled south. You do not know whether all of them intend to return. Their empty rooms matter because a colony is not measured only in buildings. It is measured in available hands. One fewer household means one fewer boat crew, fewer people to cut grass, fewer partners for exchange, and fewer young adults who might form the next household. Archaeology shows that Norse settlement in Greenland was dynamic. Farms were founded, reorganized, and abandoned at different times. Smaller or less favorable places could be left before stronger central farms. That is adaptation. But every adaptation concentrates more work in fewer hands. Your winter began before the first snow. It began when the grass was cut. All summer, the household worked the home field close to the buildings. Grass had to grow, be cut, dry, and reach storage before weather spoiled it. Animals grazed farther out while the best nearby ground was protected for winter fodder. Manure returned nutrients to soil that could not be taken for granted. The work competed with everything else. Someone had to fish. Someone had to gather fuel. Someone had to maintain the boat, repair tools, tend animals, process milk and meat, spin fiber, weave cloth, and travel between farms. A journey made for food or trade removed labor from the hayfield. A damaged roof stole days from both. There is no single Greenlandic winter. Conditions vary between inner and middle fjords, between sheltered ground and exposed roots, between one year and the next. Later climate models suggest that spring snow could remain much longer at some sites than others. Later environmental evidence also records changing water, vegetation, glaciers, and growing conditions. For the people living through it, none of this arrives as a graph. It arrives as a patch of grass that grows thin, a stream that changes course, snow that lingers where animals usually graze, a summer task completed 1 week too late. Your household entered this winter with less hay than the previous one. Not none. Not an empty barn. Just less. For months, you have responded by feeding carefully. Sheep receive what they need, not what quiets them. The cattle are checked by hand. The weakest animal is watched. No one calls this panic. It is ordinary management pushed toward its limit. Now the cow that fell in the night has risen, but she favors one leg. If she cannot walk to pasture when spring comes, every armful fed to her from this point may be lost. Your brother says to wait. You agree, because slaughtering a valuable animal too early destroys milk, breeding, status, and future security. But waiting spends hay. The decision does not need a blizzard. It grows heavier each calm morning. For a long time, the disappearance of Norse Greenland was told as a lesson about stubborn people who would not adapt. One version claimed that they clung to cattle while refusing the fish around them. The bones say otherwise. At the farm beneath the sand, archaeologists identified remains from dozens of animal species. The fish included Arctic char, cod, and capelin. Bird remains included ptarmigan and waterfowl. Domestic animals shared the record with wild resources. Human isotope evidence across Norse Greenland points in the same direction. Over time, marine food became increasingly important. In the later settlement period, some individuals show a strongly marine dietary signal. These people changed how they survived. On this winter morning, preserved fish softens beside the lamp. Seal fat protects food and bodies against cold. Wool clothing and layered rooms do work that fantasy fur costumes cannot explain. Knowledge is stored in hands: how to read water, mend a line, cut meat, manage a lamp, and divide food across a season. But adaptation is not free. Marine hunting and fishing require time, equipment, weather, access, and people. As the settlement depends more heavily on outer coast resources, journeys can grow longer and more dangerous. A boat loss does not remove only wood. It removes a crew, their labor, their future children, and the knowledge they carried. Your household still has food. No one is reduced to eating leather. No body lies frozen beside an empty pot. The problem is the number of systems that must work at once. The hay must last. The animals must survive. The boat must remain usable. The weather must permit travel. Enough people must return. Tools must hold their edges. Other farms must still have something to exchange. A society can adapt to each pressure separately and still be overwhelmed by their combination. This afternoon, your brother tests the boat's iron fitting. The metal has thinned where rope and salt have worked against it. He can repair it, but each repair leaves less iron for the next one. Norse Greenland was never entirely self-sufficient. People could work local resources with great skill, but good iron remained precious. Tools, nails, blades, and fittings connected this farm to a world beyond the horizon. Ships linked Greenland to Iceland, Norway, and European markets. Churches, trade, politics, and identity tied the settlements into the medieval North Atlantic. For centuries, walrus ivory helped make that connection valuable. Hunters traveled far north. Tusks moved south and east into European workshops and treasuries. The trade helped support ships, authority, and the flow of imported goods. Then the wider market changed. Other sources of ivory became available. Demand shifted. North Atlantic navigation grew more difficult in changing ice and storm conditions. Contact did not cease in a single year, and no one missed ship can explain the colony's ending. The connection simply became less dependable and less rewarding at the same time that local labor was becoming more valuable. On your farm, that global change is smaller than a hand. It is the worn iron at the end of a wooden tool. Your brother heats it, works it, and returns it to use. He has done this before. The repair is not evidence of technological failure. It is evidence of skill. But skill cannot create metal from nothing. At a larger farm, a landholder may still hold imported iron, spare timber, stronger boats, and more people. That difference makes consolidation rational. Families from weaker farms move toward places with better land and deeper stores. Yet the stronger farm is not infinitely strong. Each arriving person requires food. Each transferred animal requires hay. Each abandoned home field reduces the total grass that someone will cut next summer. The settlement begins to contract, not like a wall collapsing, but like a net losing knots. One connection breaks. The others carry more weight. Another breaks. The remaining lines pull tight. By late winter, the question inside your house is no longer whether the colony can survive forever. It is whether this farm should be occupied for one more year. The cow does not recover. She can stand, but the injured leg trembles. When moved, she places only the edge of her hoof against the floor. Your brother still wants to wait. The child has begun carrying handfuls of fodder to her when no one is watching. You understand both of them. This animal is not excess weight. She is milk that could feed people next year. She is a calf not yet born. She is manure for the home field. Hide, meat, bone, horn, and the visible proof that this household still belongs among farmers. But she is also eating the future of every other animal in the room. The decision is made without ceremony. The child is sent outside. The useful parts will be kept. Nothing about the choice is easy, and nothing about it proves that the household is starving. Winter herd management always required decisions about which animals could be supported. What has changed is the margin for being wrong. Older explanations sometimes imagine Norse society as rigid, people so committed to European farming that they ignored Greenland itself. The evidence now presents a more difficult picture. They farmed, hunted, fished, changed their diet, reorganized farms, and used marine resources with increasing intensity. They adapted. They also remained a small population dependent on labor, reproduction, boats, trade, and a narrow farming landscape. Adaptation could preserve the system for generations without making it invulnerable. There is no need to invent a superstorm. There is no need to choose between climate and trade or between demography and ecology, as though only one is allowed to matter. In parts of southern Greenland, newer studies find prolonged drying that could reduce grass production. Other work models progressive coastal flooding in the eastern settlement. Those findings do not map automatically onto this western farm. Here, researchers have examined changing glaciers, water routes, soils, vegetation, and the timing of abandonment. The effects differ by place. The shared lesson is not that one climate event killed a colony. It is that small communities survive through margins, and several margins were shrinking together. After the animal is processed, the fodder pile will last longer. For the first time all winter, the arithmetic improves. No one in the room feels safer. Another explanation once placed an enemy outside the farm. Thule Inuit communities were present in Greenland during the later Norse period. Written traditions mention hostile encounters, and contact between peoples in a vast Arctic landscape could include conflict as well as observation, avoidance, exchange, or knowledge that never entered European records. But archaeology does not support a simple story in which Inuit attackers exterminated the Western settlement. Archaeologists have not found evidence for a campaign of destruction that explains the empty farms. Inuit people are not the shadow moving toward this door. No one is coming to destroy your family tonight. That is what makes the decision harder. When the first signs of thaw arrive, the household has survived. The remaining sheep stand. The boat can be repaired. Food remains. The child has stopped asking whether the cow will rise again. You could stay. You could spend spring restoring the home field, summer cutting hay, and autumn sealing the roof. You could bet that enough neighbors will return, that the boat will hold, that someone will bring iron, and that next winter will be kinder. Or you could leave while you still possess the strength and tools to do it. The household chooses what can travel. Iron first, cutting tools, needles, woven cloth, rope, portable vessels, preserved food. The lightest objects may represent the most labor. Heavy furniture remains. Turf walls cannot be packed into a boat. Land that defines status becomes useless if there are too few people to work it. Some animals will be moved or transferred. Others cannot be taken. The destination is not certain in the historical record, so it is not certain here. Perhaps a larger farm still works farther along the fjord. Perhaps relatives have gone south toward the eastern settlement. Perhaps later movement will carry people across the sea. Departure is not failure to survive. It is a survival decision. When you close the door, you do not know that it is final. People often leave places intending to return. A roof can wait through one season. A home field can be cut next summer. But an empty farm deteriorates, and every season away makes return more expensive. The colony is not destroyed when the last person dies. It is destroyed when return stops making sense. After the household leaves, nothing dramatic happens. Wind moves over the home field. Water follows old and new channels. Turf settles. Timber softens. Sediment enters rooms that once held smoke, voices, tools, animals, and sleep. At some sites, preservation keeps details that history forgot. Archaeologists recover cloth and hair, wooden objects, insects, seeds, fish bones, bird bones, and the remains of domestic animals. Managed soil records where generations cut grass and spread manure. Room plans reveal where people worked and where animals stood. The evidence is intimate, but it is not complete. A Norwegian cleric's later account described the western settlement as abandoned. The larger eastern settlement continued. In 1408, a wedding at Valsey produced the last surviving written testimony of Norse life in Greenland. By around the middle of the 15th century, the wider Norse settlement had ended too. No final census survives. No document lists the last ship or the last grave. The people may have moved between Greenlandic farms, left for Iceland or Norway, joined other communities, or followed paths that the evidence can no longer recover. What disappeared was not necessarily a population in one fatal moment. It was continuity. The title calls this the winter that destroyed a Viking colony. History gives us no single winner and no single destroyer. It gives us a society that lasted for centuries at the edge of Arctic farming. Its people changed their diet, managed animals, hunted, fished, traded, repaired, consolidated, and endured. Then environmental change, costly travel, weaker trade, scarce labor, and demographic fragility narrowed the choices available to them. Our fictional household survives because it leaves before survival becomes impossible. That may be less spectacular than a colony frozen in one night. It is also more human. The final winter does not need to kill you. It only needs to convince you that there should not be another.